See. All righty. How's it going, Steve? To start off today, can you give us a little intro? Can you tell us who you are and the brand that you're involved with?
Yeah, you bet. Yeah, my name's Steve Isom. I'm the executive vice president of Stonebriar Auto Services. We're a Jiffy Lube franchise.
Got it. Awesome. Um, okay, so our first question here, we'd love to hear a little bit. Can you tell me about your personal story going back even before franchising? What was your career path and kind of how did you find your way to the franchise world to begin with?
Well, that started when in 1990 I got a job working for Jiffy Lube International on the franchisor side. And after a year of helping franchisees, I got an offer to run store operations for a Jiffy Lube franchisee in Kansas City. And so I started that in 1991. We grew that franchise, and in 1995 we merged with three other Jiffy Lube franchises. So at that time we got to 67 locations. I led store operations for that organization and grew that to 450. Little time on the franchisor side, and then years, growing that large national Jiffy Lube franchise. And then after that, I spent some time doing M&A work for a regional quick lube, and then some time leading operations on the franchisor side for Take Five. Then I got the opportunity to start a brand new Jiffy Lube franchise, which I got involved with starting Stonebriar about 4 or 5 years ago.
Wow. All right. A lot of experience with the scaling up. I'd be curious to hear going way back. I guess, well, you had some experience on the franchisor side working with franchisees, but going back to when you first became an owner for the first time at yourself, was scaling always the goal? Like, was scale something you considered when you first started?
Yes, that's always been the plan. Really, I think with almost every organization I've been with.
Yeah, awesome. I guess building off that, when you were evaluating the Jiffy Lube franchise or just the potential of it, how what were you looking at? Like, how would you recommend other prospective franchisees who also want to scale? How do you recommend they evaluate the scalability of a franchise?
Well, what we did, I mean, one, we were already looking in the quick lube space, just knowing that's where my years of experience were, and then we looked at a model that really had um, you know uh, future for growth and expansion. And Jiffy Lube had pretty recently started this new multi-care model, different than the straight quick lube, where we also do repair work, tires, brakes, alignments, services like that. Um, so kind of creating a newer model, so that really felt like that gave us a lot more runway with the evolution of vehicles. We wanted to be able to pivot in the future if necessary. And this model versus others in the space felt like it gave us the ability to pivot whatever direction we needed to as that industry evolved, and know that it was fairly new in the quick lube space with this new one-stop shop, be able to do anything model. So we really were looking for something with legs, and that there was a need for, so that we could build to some scale.
Hmm. Yeah, well said. That's great insight. This question, I'd be interested to hear your response. It's kind of on the flip side of the equation a little bit, but I'd be curious to hear if a franchisor wanted to capture your attention today, like, and trying to get you as a great multi-unit owner to invest in their brand, how would they do so? What does a franchisor need to do to capture the attention of a great multi-unit owner, in your opinion?
Well, I think the strength of the brand, the amount of support that they're going to give the franchisees, um, and what looks like the ability to scale. Not a lot of constraints and the ability for a franchise to be able to grow, I think are important concepts, and to know that whatever that concept is, that there's a big need that you'd be meeting.
Definitely. Okay, so for this one, I'd be curious, over your career of franchise ownership and over all these years of scaling, what have been some of the roadblocks you've had to overcome? Like when you think back, were there any times where you were really struggling to make it over that threshold of, 50 to 100 unit count, or any roadblocks that you had to overcome along the way?
Well, I mean, really, in the current times, just availability of top quality people. So as you're growing, you're building a team and hiring much faster than somebody who's not growing, and then basically just always hiring and training in your typical turnover. So you're doing this at a much larger scale. So, and just knowing over the last few years, that's been a big challenge, and to know the difference between a franchisor and a franchisee, besides just the basic structure, is more of an entrepreneurial spirit and maybe a little more aggressive, and a franchisor that may not have that same idea in terms of aggressive growth.
Hmm.
So you want to make sure that that really lines up, and that you're not held back by any constraints that may be out of your control.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes total sense. Okay, kind of similar to that. So we talked a little bit about advice for franchisors looking for owners. What advice do you have for first-time franchisees who have, big dreams of one day becoming a great multi-unit owner? Have any advice that you would tell yourself back when you first started?
Well, I think it really comes down to people, and so hiring people of shared values that you have, because if you're going to grow, what you lose, or can lose, is that um, sense of an owner, like at every location, right? So as you grow, you don't want to dilute your culture and what you're wanting to bring to your customers. So you really want to hire people of shared values, like-minded people, and never settle on the quality of people. And also, um, and I know it could get a little expensive, but hiring in advance. There's nothing more valuable than your team. And if you're going to grow, you want to be kind of front loaded and not catching up on terms of talent. So a lot of times people will kind of wait a little too long, and then you're trying to hire, operators at whatever level. If you're behind the gun, and under pressure because you kind of waited a little too long or to the last minute, that you may convince yourself these are people that you want to hire. That when you hire ahead of time, one, you're ready for those openings, you're opening your stores and running with the level of service and quality that you wanted and that you achieved in your first store, and you're not diluting it as you grow. So I think nothing is more important than that, your people.
Yeah, very well said. I love that's really great advice. Okay, amazing. Well, that was all of the questions we have here. We're going to run through, but just want to open the floor a little bit while we have you. Anything else you would like our audience to know, and anything else about your story or about advice for franchise owners, about Jiffy Lube, about the brands you work with? Anything we didn't talk about today that you'd like to share while we have you?
Well, the one thing I tell people is, people ask us a lot, how we opened up 100 locations in 16 states in 4 years. But, it's really about not giving yourself constraints. I mean, that, it might sound crazy at the beginning of how you're going to do that, how you're going to operate stores spread out like that. But as long as you, build a plan and think ahead, it really helps. While there's a lot of things that you get thrown your way that maybe you can't prepare for, it really is building a plan that takes all of those type of things into account. So it makes it a really fun ride, that when you're trying to be proactive versus being reactive, that makes it really hard. So that's definitely something I would say.
Yeah, love that. Perfect. Amazing, Steve. This was so great talking to you. These are great insights, and I really appreciate you taking the time to talk with us today.
Oh, I enjoyed it anytime.
Awesome.